Hey, so today I'm going to be talking about the best film camera of all time, which is the Fuji GA645. Now this camera is a medium format point and shoot camera, meaning there aren't too many other cameras like it, and I picked mine up on eBay from a Japanese reseller for about 650 Australian dollars. Now this camera is the perfect combination of being really compact and lightweight, but also still producing really great quality images, which is sort of something you have to sacrifice with something bigger and heavier like the Mamiya RZ. Now don't get me wrong, the Mamiya RZ is a great camera, it's just way too big and heavy to take out on long day trips. It's also the perfect combination of being fully automatic and producing really great quality images, which means you can produce some really great work with having zero skill. So the photos that I'll be sharing with you today are actually from a trip that I took to North America with a few friends of mine. Now of course this was a simpler time back before coronavirus, but we visited New York, Toronto and Chicago. And at the end of this video I do want to discuss whether or not I think you should try and pick up this camera. Despite me ranting and raving about it, there are a few things that mean this camera isn't going to be for everyone. And they're definitely really important things to keep in mind if you are thinking about picking one up for yourself. So feel free to stick around until the end, otherwise just enjoy the photos. Okay, now for the moment you've all been waiting for. Do I think you should pick up this camera? Absolutely. I'm sure no one saw that coming, but I definitely think you should make this purchase. However, there are a few things you might want to keep in mind before doing so. The first thing to consider is the cost of the camera. This camera is slowly gaining traction and is actually becoming a bit of a cult classic. And because of that, the camera's actually already gone up 400 Australian dollars since I made the purchase. So if money's a little tight, you might want to make the purchase sooner rather than later. The next thing to keep in mind is the viewfinder. This camera's viewfinder actually operates in the opposite way to a traditional camera, meaning when you're holding the camera in what is traditionally landscape, you're actually shooting in portrait orientation and vice versa. Now obviously this isn't a complete deal breaker, but it is something that takes a little bit of getting used to, particularly when you're first starting to use a camera. Another thing to note, which is probably my biggest issue with the camera, is the autofocus. The camera uses a zoning system similar to a rangefinder, and I have found it to be somewhat inconsistent, particularly when I'm shooting through glass or when something is close to the foreground. And I'll throw a few examples up on the screen here of what I'm talking about. The zoning system will autofocus on the subject that I'm wanting to take a photo of beyond the glass. And when I go to take a second image, the zoning system will remain the same, which you would assume would mean that the subject is still in focus. However, when I take the second photo, the glass is now in focus, and there's really no way to tell the difference between the two. And lastly, while this camera is a pretty great all-rounder, it is also pretty noisy. And as you can hear, this is what it sounds like when you take a photo. Which means combined with the autofocus, this camera probably isn't going to be your run and gun street style photography camera. But that's pretty much all I have to say about the Fuji GA645. If any of you guys happen to own this camera, I'd love to see the images that you've taken with it, so feel free to reach out to me on any of the social media platforms below. And I'll also be linking a bunch of other videos discussing this camera below if you wanted to hear more about it or if you just wanted to see some more images from the camera. Also, be sure to let me know if you wanted to see more of this type of content. I really enjoyed making this video and I have tons more content that I'd like to create in the future. Until then, I appreciate you watching the video and I'll see you next time.